Okay, we're going to start talking about disorders with your immunity since we just talked about the immune system. And we have some definitions here that throughout this whole chapter that you're going to need to be aware of. First of them, first of them is immunopathology. And this is where you study the disease associated with either the underactivity or the overactivity of your immune response. Now, we all are familiar with allergies, which is also just sensitivity, where we have an exaggerated expression of immune responses to an allergen, which is an antigen. We've heard of autoimmunity, where we have abnormal responses to our self-antigens. Immunodeficiency is where you have a deficiency or a total loss of your immunity. And then cancer is a cause and effect of your immune dysfunction. Now, let's look at allergies. It's where you're hypersensitive to an allergen or an antigen. And it'll manifest itself in inflammatory symptoms. The allergens are actually antigens that don't cause a problem for normal people, just for you. And there are four categories of pathologies that involve these overreactions or these allergies: type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. And this is a table that talks about each of them. You've got immediate allergies, type 1. That's stuff like hay fever and asthma. Type 2, the antibody-mediated incompatibilities would be like blood group incompatibility. Type 3, immune complex diseases. This would be like systemic lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. And then type 4, T-cell mediated hypersensitivities would be things like contact dermatitis or the rejection of grafts. So let's look at the type 1 to start with. They are immediate in onset, and they're associated with exposure to specific antigens. And there's two levels of severity. First is atopy. This is a chronic local allergy like hay fever or asthma. And you may have it in a certain area, and then you move from that area and you don't have it. It's not usually life-threatening, it's just aggravating. Anaphylaxis, though, is an explosive reaction that's systemic, and it can involve your airway being obstructed and circulatory collapse, and it can be fatal. Now, the reason you get these is just you have a predisposition to allergies because of your genetics. Like if you've got a parent that's allergic to ragweed, you may have a child that's allergic to something like cat hair. It's affected by your age and whether you have an infection that goes along with it, and of course by where you live, like we said. They can be lifelong, or you might outgrow them. Or you may even start to develop them later in life. Something you've never been allergic to, all of a sudden you are. Typically, these allergens will enter through epithelial portals, such as respiratory, where you inhale them, or gastrointestinal, or through your skin. And the organ that's affected by it, where you have the most reaction, may not be the way that it got in. Now, these are some common allergies, and we classify them by their portal of entry. We've got inhalants, pollen, dust, mold spores, dander, aerosols, ingestants, things that we actually take in by and ingest, like food. We're all familiar with people that have peanut allergies, food additives, or oral drugs like aspirin. Some people can't take it. They're allergic, or penicillin. Another one is things that you are injected with, injectants like if you get a bee sting or a wasp sting or another insect, certain drugs you may be allergic to, or enzymes or hormones. And then there are those that you actually come in contact with. Sometimes it's a topical drug or a cosmetic or a detergent or a dye or a solvent that causes issues for you. Now, the first contact with the allergen is the sensitizing dose. And usually you don't have any signs or symptoms. And what it's doing is priming your immune system and getting it ready for the next time you encounter the allergen. And then you have the subsequent exposures with the same allergen, that's the provocative dose. And you can have things like vasodilation and bronchoconstriction occur. And you've got these mast cells that are going to form, and they can remain in your tissues for years. So our first concepts check: type 1 allergic reactions produce symptoms upon the second exposure to an allergen. True or false? That's true.